Okay, back with you again. Now for this next lesson, just going to grab a new page. I want to show you how we can create a simple, I suppose you call it a patchwork pattern. It's a bit like, what do they call it? Oh, the name escapes me. Like a windmill type of thing, where you cut triangles and you place them down going in different directions. And when we create applique and do this sort of technique, again, we've got a blanket stitch or a satin stitch, and sometimes you might just like to do something a little bit different. Pinwheel is the word I'm looking for. So for this, when we do applique, generally we trim the fabric in place. But I'm going to show you how you could create this and not have to trim the fabric. So you would pre-cut the fabric. So I'm going to go into Corral and we're going to draw a square. So this is the square of the fabric, which is going to be 3.5 inches square. And then we can bring this in. So if you were going to do this design, you would cut your fabric 3.5 inches and then cut it on the diagonal in both directions. And that will give you the exact size of this triangle. Okay, so I've opened Corral. The first thing you need to look at is in the middle here, just about 12 o'clock, it says inches. So I'm going to choose a rectangle shape and draw a square and go back to the select tool. Now, up on the top toolbar here, it tells me this is 3.604. So I want this to be a square 3.5. So I'm going to put in 3.50 by 3.500. And hit enter. So now I have a 3.5 inch square. Now across the top here, these things can give you funny corners. I'm just going to show you we don't want funny corners, but while you're in there, it's a good idea. So if I click this one and then grab this reshape tool and pull down this node, you can see how we get rounded corners. If I choose the second one, it's going to dip inwards. If I pull this down, you'll see how we get this kind of corner. And if I choose the third one and pull this down, we can cut the corners off. Okay? We don't want to do that, but I just wanted to show you that. Go back to select. Now we have a 2mm line. I'm going to make it a hairline, which is super thin, and that's okay. And with that on the page somewhere, we're going to have it selected and go back into Digitizer. Now that should be in the hoop, and if it's not, it doesn't matter because we can move it. So you can see here's the square. Now this has come in from Corral as a vector. So if I was to go to show, hide bitmaps, it's still there because it's not a bitmap, it's a vector. And this vector just hides it. It's still there, but it's hidden. The only way to get rid of this when we don't want it is to go back into Corral. So for now, I'm going to choose my closed shape tool, and I'm going to copy the exact size of this. And you can see how the line kind of turns grey. Should have made it red really, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm holding the shift key, which is keeping the line exactly straight. Now I only need to do 3 sides and press enter, and it will fill in the rest for me. Now I don't need a fill, I need just a line. If I click off, I'm in metric, so if I go to US and choose that line, it tells me it's 3.501. So I'm going to make that a 0, and a 0. I'm going to unlock this padlock. So you can always use Corel in order to be able to draw things, okay? So I'm just going to put that here for a sec and go back into graphics and show you how you could do the same thing in a different way. We purely only want this as a reference line. So you can see here's the stitch line I just created. If I select this line now and say convert, it's going to take that box back in as a line, like so. So you can either bring it in as a drawing or bring it in as a line. It makes no difference. Okay, I just wanted to be able to show you both ways. Now what I'm going to do is choose the open line, and I'm going to digitize a line from one corner to the next and press enter, and then go from this corner to the next on the diagonal. Okay, so we have 3.5 inch box cut in the diagonals. So what this is going to do for us is give us the exact size we need to create our design based on a 3.5 inch square of fabric. Now, if the black line here is your fabric, the red lines are going to be where you cut your fabric. So now we need to go back in and draw. And I'm not going to start right on the edge. I'm going to click here to here. I'm going to hold control. Make sure I'm right on that corner. And it's important that you are. Now I can't hold control here, because what happens when you hold control and you try and move, it moves in 15-degree increments. So I can go here, here. I think it might let me actually. It's just off a whisker, so I'm not going to hold control. Just going to click here, go back up to the top and press enter. And now I have a triangle. Okay, so I'm going to pick all of these other things up. I might just group them and put them out there for now. So this guy I need to rotate. So I'm going to rotate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So he's pointing to the right. I'm going to place that on that center line. Now you'll see when you nail the center line, the color changes. Let me just back out a bit. Can you see it kind of has a white to it? Now I don't want it all the way down into this center point, just up a tiny bit. Then what I'm going to do is go into layout. No, I'm going to do this, go to digitize. Here, Applique is what I want, and click on Applique. Now I want to turn this piece into an applique, so I'm going to go over the top of this line again, because now I have the exact size. I'm going to click to the top, down, and I'm going to stop just shy of that last node and press enter. Now you'll see I have an applique shape. Now it's too close to the bottom now with that stitch, but I'm not keeping that stitch, so I'm okay. Now I am going to call this pre-cut. I'm also going to put my measurements back onto metric, because I think better in metric for some things. So this is our applique. Now this, on your resequence toolbar over here, we don't need all these other things now, so I can delete the line underneath and delete all of those. So all we have now is our applique. Now if I click on colours, you'll see there's 3 colours associated. One is the placement line, one is the tack down, and the other one's the cover stitch. Now this is based on a satin stitch. I don't want a satin stitch. For now, I'm going to pretend I want a blanket stitch. But if I keep the tack down, you're going to see the tack down. So I have 2 choices. I could get rid of the tack down and say none, or I could make it another run line and then you won't see it. Now that's entirely up to you, whether you want to keep that there or have none. When I did it, I had none. So I've got a placement line now and a cover stitch as my applique. But when I turn this off, this is what you see, okay? But there is 2 lines there which are together. So now I have this, I'm going to go to layout, choose a circle and have 4. And then I'm going to come back in. That's not what I want. Try again. Okay, so I want circle layout to work area and I want 4. So it's put another one here, another one at 6 o'clock, another one at 9. I'm going to press enter and there you'll see you have a pinwheel. Now it's also given me more of the same colours on my resequence toolbar because it sees each one of these as a complete design. Now what I can do is move the pink up and it won't let me because it wants to sew the pink line, which is the placement, then you'll stick the fabric down and then it will do the blanket stitch over the top. Then it will go to the next one and do the same, and that's fine, but that annoys me because I would rather do all the placement lines and then all the stitches over the top. But the whole point of this exercise was to show you how to choose a different stitch other than this one. So what I'm going to do is go to Edit Objects in your toolbar and choose Break Apart. What that's done now, it's broken all of these apart. So now I could take that second pink and move it up, take this and move it up, and take this one and move it up. So all my placement lines will be sewn at the same time, and then all the cover stitch is sewn at the same time. So this is a pre-cut design. Now once you break it apart, there's no going back. We can't put it back together again now. It just is what it is. So here now we have our blanket stitch, but what if we don't want a blanket stitch? Let's go into, let's click on this. So if I click on all the pink, I'm going to copy, paste, and change the color immediately. Let's make it blue. Because now the blue line is exactly on top of the placement line, and inside on the edge of this line is where you're going to put your fabric. So technically now I don't want the red, because although it's going to be an applique, it's not done in the traditional manner. So I'm going to delete the red. And now when I pick up the blue, I have choices. I can choose a motif. Not that one, clearly. But when we scoot down, we can go into Embroidery Gallery and go in and pick something like this. Now, it's going to stitch over your applique, and it's going to be on top of the fabric and off the fabric and a little bit of raw edge. But hey, that's what this is about. It's about trying to do something a little bit different. What if you don't like that one? Let's pick another one. Let's try this. Motif number 12. It's kind of like little diamonds, and it is going to cover your edge, but not with your traditional satin stitch. With this stitch, let's choose 13. So now we have these arrows. So here you can choose anything you like. Look at this. This is so interesting how it finishes off here. We could go into the folder we made. I think our pearls might be too big though. They're a bit big. But you could go in and make smaller pearls and put those in there. Let's go back into gallery. Let's look at motif number 36. Now this is really interesting, and it's going to give you a completely different look. So this is about do an applique not in a traditional sense. See, I rather like this too. So you can choose any motif you fancy, and there's lots to choose from. And, you know, clearly some are too big, some are not appropriate. The only way to figure out is to select. That's quite busy, but it's interesting what it does in the center. Now, as we did previously, let's try this one. It's quite interesting too. As we did in the previous video, you can always resize your motifs. See, these stars look good. Now, you might have a theme on something you're doing, and, you know, this works well with your fabric. I really like this effect. It's kind of, you know, a bit of satin and then a break. You've got so many different choices you could choose here. This is a bit like heirloomy kind of stitch. You could do something like that. These flowers and these scrolly things don't work. Knives and forks don't work. This would work. This is nice. Now, as I look at this, for example, it tells me it's 4 mil. So what if you wanted something that you could make a bit bigger? Even this is quite nice. and it's still a raw edge, so you're still going to see the fabric, well, partly raw edge, I guess. Let's go with the diamonds. Now they're 3.6 wide and 4 high. Let's make them a bit bigger. Now what happens when you make them bigger, things will change here as they grow, and they can be any size you like. I can't remember where we started. Okay, look at this. It's kind of got a bit crazy. But what we can do then is adjust the spacing. So we're at 3.99. So if we adjust the spacing now, they'll spread out a little bit more. Here we go. Look at this. Now sometimes you seem to press a lot before something happens. I'm at 775. I quite like this, even though it's stitching over the top of itself. It's quite interesting. So change the size of the design of the motif. Make them a bit further apart if that's what you want. But this way you get to do this as an applique and you get to choose a different stitch. So I'm at 10 now. I quite like what's going on here now. I don't mind what's going on with the points. So there you have it. So I've chosen motif 12. I'm at 661 in the width and 669 in the height and 1031 in the spacing. And I don't have a satin stitch or a blanket stitch, you know, I have something different. So that's choosing your motifs. You could also go in and just choose a stem stitch. So now it's just like a stem stitch or a back stitch. Back stitch is not enough of it, I don't think. You need to kind of anchor your fabrics. You need to have something to anchor your fabric. So if you were to use a stem stitch, we've got a width of 2. We could make that 3. And now it's a bit wider. So you've got, once you break it apart, you've got options in what you can do, what you can choose, what kind of stitch you could have to play with. So this technically inside here would be fabric. And it will do the placement line, and what I do is use a glue stick and glue the fabric in each of the placement lines, and then it will come back and do the stitch over the top. Now if I hit the replay on here, you'll see it stitches down the first placement line, and then it comes down here. Okay, I'm just going to stop for now and choose the pink and go into reshape. Now can you see how it's going to start here? I don't want it to start there. I want it to start down there and end there. If I choose this one, it's going to I can see the end, I don't see the start. Okay, let's choose, I need to be on the pink. Reshape. Okay, we've got this guy. Okay, so it's here. See, here's the start and end. So I'm going to put that in the center. Choose the next one, into reshape. It's over here as well. Going to put that in the center. And then the last one, reshape. It's up the top. I'm going to put it in the center. Okay. Now, let's have a look at these guys. Reshape. So it's going to end down here. Go into reshape. It's the same. So they'll all be the same. That's okay. So now if I turn off my true view, okay, and play. So it's going to start here, stitch up, speed it up a bit, and here. Now it's only got to, don't know why it's doing that second line there. See if it does it here. No, it didn't. And back out. Yep. Okay, you see this little mark here? That's the frame out. So when we do applique, it puts a little frame out, so it moves out of the way so that you can put the fabric down. Now, because it was an applique and we've broken it apart, these things in between all of our stitches on our resequence, these empty spaces are frame out points. So you can see it's going to stitch that out. We'll just go from one to the other to the other. So I'm just going to stop that, turn that back on. And I'm going to go back up and delete the empty spaces between each of the triangles. Delete, 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 delete. And the last one, which would be that one out there. This one here, I'm going to delete that. Okay, it's gone. So it's not going to frame out, it's going to stay there. Now you can lift the hoop off and stick things down. I prefer to do that than have all those empty spaces in there. Let me stop, true view, play. There we go, Speedy Gonzales. So they're all starting in the center and working out. Okay, so good. Now, of course, this is any type of stitch you want it to be. And, you know, I've always been going to do a quilt like this. I just haven't. I did a few squares and kind of liked them, but I thought they'd be nice each one a different colour, each square a different colour, stitching a different colour. There you go, one day. Now, I'm going to select all of that and just group it for a moment. Because if you're going to do this as a patchwork and let's say you want to do a quilt or you just want to do a cushion or table run, I've done this as a table runner, it was quite lovely. You might want to put some quilting in the background. So to do that, we need to go into Advanced and go into Ambiance Quilting. Now I've got the 220 hoop selected, so I'm going to take this down to 218. Going to choose Echo, going to leave the settings as they are and do it in orange so I can see it and say OK. Ta-da! So you see now how it's put all the quilting around. Now depending on the size of your triangles or what stitch you've chosen, you might get something a bit different. I don't mind this at all, I quite like it, but these little guys in here need to go. So I'm just going to select them and delete them. And then you can see on the resequence we have all these lines. So as it stands, the machine will stitch one out and then it will cut the thread, stop and move on. So we need to make some adjustments. Now the other thing here is these are rounded, which I don't mind, but everything else is pointy. If you don't want them rounded, if I click on this and go into reshape, I can make this pointy by clicking on that circle, pressing the space bar and adjusting. And it might need 2. I don't know. You can adjust it. You can adjust all or none of these by playing with the nodes. Okay, I might leave it the way it was. So if you want to, you just click on the line and go to reshape and make the changes. But if you make one change, like this, you make that pointy, you're going to have to make this guy pointy and this one and so on. Okay. Now that's having this quilting using the echo. So if I just copy and cut, and let's select it again. It doesn't have to be that one. You can go back into Ambiance and choose stipple. Say OK. And now you can have stipple design that goes all the way around. Okay, undo that. Ambiance. We could have scroll. Now scroll is a little bit different in that it doesn't close this shape. So it starts with an open line and it ends with an open line. But that's entirely up to you. The other thing you can do, which I do sometimes just because, is to go back into digitize and choose a closed shape. And I'm going to just roughly mimic this. Select, walk it off. So I've got another triangle, albeit a bit wonky down the bottom here. So let's just pull this down. Okay. Now, if I just make that smaller, let's make it a fill. And let's make it green. Now, you can play with these and anchor them around any way you want. I might just flip it like so. So if I put that here, I'm going to make it a bit smaller. Now, this is not a permanent thing. This is just to get some interesting quilting happening. So I might just line up the points and then I'll go back to layout with that selected and choose let's go circle, so they're each kind of mimicking the first one like we did with the triangles in the first place. So press enter, going to group them all together, and then with those there I'm going to select everything and go back into advanced digitizing, quilting, and I'm going to choose my echo again in the orange and do this. Now look what's happened to our quilting. So the green would come out. I'm going to delete the green. But we've created some interesting shapes going around. So here I would probably copy and paste and hold the shift key and resize to have another one in there. Now these you would decide to either keep or delete. If you're going to keep them, you would need to make them bigger because they're way too small. And then if you delete them both in one quarter, you're going to have to do it in all 4 corners. Okay, now I've selected this one and made it smaller. So now if I do that and go back to layout, I can do what I did before. Escape. Choose that. Press enter. And I would make them orange. And we've just added another round of quilting in there to where that triangle was. So you can see how it gives you, again, a completely different look. Now you could put any shape in there, it doesn't matter. It's just putting an object in that the quilting then needs to find a way around to create an interesting pattern. Now I would check the length on this stitch, make it at least a 2.7, turn the variable off, and then apply branching so it stitches out all in one go. But I'm going to delete that one and paste. I'll put the other one back in. Where are we? Advanced quilting. This one. So select all of the orange. Check your stitch length. Probably go 2.70. Turn off the variable and apply branching. So right now it would sew out this, cut the thread, move to the next one. If we do branching, it's going to sew the whole thing in one go. So I go to digitize, branching, and you can't see it, but right down the bottom left side, it's got entry point. So I want it to start there and end there. So now if I look at it with True View turned off, you can see the jumps. So these jumps you can cut, and it's going to sew all the way around, jumping between each level of stitching and stitch everything twice. Now let me undo that because my variable's still on. So I need to turn that off. Make sure I've got all of that selected, apply branching, and just say start there, end there. That's better. And the reason I noticed that the stitching was quite small here with variable turned on. Now, if you don't change your stitch length and adjust your variable before you do branching, and you did it after branching, it will sew the first round with the variable on and the second with it off. So it's not a good plan either way. So if you want it to be at a decent length, you need to fix it here before you apply branching. Okay, so that's it for that. That's one way of doing your quilting. You can, of course, create your own. Take this out. You could go back to digitizing. Let's do this. So if I draw a circle, select it, make it a line. So if you wanted, don't know that circles go well with the squares in the pattern, but you'll get the idea. So you could do bubbles. Just now, if you're going to do bubbles, I just create one, then I copy and paste. Copy, paste, move it. You should make them different sizes, so they're not all the same. It's kind of a bit more random. But sometimes in the point here, it's just easier if they're the same size till you get out a little bit. Okay, so paste. So here it could be bigger now. And copy and paste. Now, if you want some bubbles, you only need to do a quarter, okay? So now there's no difference between copy and paste and duplicate, so either one works fine. Once you've done a copy and paste, you can just keep pasting because it's already copied, but it always plants it back in the same place. So if we make them bigger now, copy and paste. You really don't want these too small, so paste and it puts it back here. Paste. So once you've done a quarter, you can simply copy this then back into the other quarters. Make that one a bit bigger. Paste. And then sometimes if I'm wanting to do bubbles, I might just do a few, group those together and then copy all of those across. But this really looks good if you've got random size bubbles. Okay, let's just do a few more. Grab a big one. Bubbles give great texture when you've stitched them out. Now I'll make this a bit smaller. You can always come back in and copy this guy again because he's already smaller, and paste and then move it. And don't feel that you have to fill in every space. You don't have to do that. You can if you like. There's no wrong here, as I say. There's just different. So at the end of the day, if you like it, it's a good one. So paste again. And this one I probably just make a bit bigger to take me into that corner, which means this guy could be a bit bigger. I don't want it to come over this stitching. Paste. Could make this one a bit bigger. Ideally, if they touch another one somewhere, the machine is just going to run from one to another to another. Copy, paste. I could stick a little guy in here. Copy, paste. Oops. Maybe one more just there. Okay, so we've got a whole quarter of bubbles. Now there might need to be something else going on over here. So ideally you need to meet the quarter lines of your hoop. That will do nicely. Okay, so if I select all of my bubbles, I can turn my stitch length to 2. Okay, happy with all of that. Now if I apply branching, I could say start there and end there. If I go into objects and have a look, you can see, ignore this, this was our other quilting. I'll just change the colour. So we have this section of bubbles. Now if I go back to layout and go to what we did before, circle, layout to work area, it's adjusted the bubbles for the points for each area, and now you have all 4 sections done. So I would press enter, click off, and here's your same design now with lovely quilted bubbles. Now as we look at this, each section is branching is applied to each quarter. Now what we could do is break it apart. Now we've got them all in place. Go back to edit, break it apart, break apart. Don't have to do this, but so then I can just pick up all of that colour and apply branching and say start there, end there. And if I go in now and have a look, all of my bubbles are all branched in the one place. And that's a nice, quick, easy way to get that to happen. Now, if you go back in and you have a little look-see and you don't like something, you can go into reshape and just change a little bit. But you don't have as many options by using the circle tool in Digitizer, this one, as if you drew a circle yourself. But for this technique, either one works fine. So that's it for this. I hope you can decide which one you like the best, how you like your quilting, whether you want to go with the bubbles or the lines. Entirely up to you. Just gives you another option. So that's it for this video. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye.